picks that one up as well because he bundles the whole thing and thus charges the client 1,500 BD, so with all the applicable VAT on that. You can see that the VAT, 15 VAT that the warehouse provider receives from the transport provider, he will have to remit it to the government, so that's 15. But that 15 that was paid to the warehouse provider by the transport provider can net it off against the VAT that he is charging and should be paying to the client. So eventually, what does the government get? It's the bottom 75 BD, because that's the actual final tax. So that's what it means, it's a value-added tax. But it receives the 75 through 15 from the warehouse provider and 60 from the transport provider. So that's basically how the netting off works. So VAT for the transport provider should not be a cost. It can recover that one. The same from the warehouse provider, because of course I've simplified things here. He or she or the company will also receive quite some supplies that the VAT can be recovered from. So it is neutral for businesses. It's actually a bit like a subterranean river going through the business when it's fully taxable. It becomes very much a compliance and reporting approach to it, but with some sophistication, because it's not always that easy to see where and how you should basically charge tax. This is what we know, and I'm going to give some examples, or you might have basically some questions about some examples. Okay, in the GCC framework agreement, it gives an option to the different member states what to do with local transport, meaning transport starting, let's take Bahrain, starting in Bahrain, ending in Bahrain. That's local transport. So it doesn't go, it's not a, okay, it might also mean if somebody of your drivers get lost, a local transport will also be a transport starting in Bahrain, going over the causeway and then realizing that you need to go back. So that's, if there is a good reason, there might be local transport as well. Especially UAE might have it with a little bit of Oman in there if they would go through it. So that's local transport, both of goods and passengers. So there is a choice for the countries to exempt it, which I would not recommend, or to tax it, which I would recommend, and it's probably, it's almost certainly going to be the tax treatment. So local transport within a country will be subject to 5% VAT. I see no trace whatsoever in any draft legislation that would exempt it, because that might sound beneficial for your clients, but it will be a cost for you, and you will pass it on to your clients. So it's better indeed to have it taxed, and they can only recover it, because I assume that most of your business of your clients are corporate, so it's not a cost for them. That's a local transport, so expected to be taxable at 5%. That's an option for the member states, but there is also an obligation for the member states to apply a treatment in case of intra-GCC and international transports. Intra-GCC transports is a transport starting in one GCC country and effectively ending in another GCC country. International transport is a transport starting in a GCC country and effectively ending in a non-GCC country, or vice versa. So it can also be a transport with one of your partners that starts somewhere else in the world and ends in the GCC. So these are the international transports. Article 30, to be very precise, of the framework agreement. On top of that, that will be zero rated. So in other words, no tax, but no cost on the input. And there is no option. That has to be the treatment as it is. I want to mention also Article 30, because some of your client portfolio might be government organizations here in this country or across other countries. So Article 30 gives an option that you would not have to charge any VAT to such organizations. It would be exempt, but in this case it's a special exemption because you can still get back your VAT on the input. A government organization, that's not going to be BABCO, that's not going to be EWA, that's not going to be any organization that has also commercial activities. It will be indeed purely ministries, that don't have any commercial activities. And there will be a list published in due time. probably the proof that they are entitled not to be charged with VAT by yourselves will be dependent on the handing over of certificate of exemption, so that indeed you've got clearly proof that you applied the correct VAT treatment. But mainly, anything that is local, subject to local tax, everything that is international transport or intra-GCC shall be and has to be zero-rated. I didn't mention yet ancillary services. So everything that is connected with such international or intra-GCC transport will follow the same VAT treatment. So if there are packing services or if there are basically transit services that are connected to such international transport or intra-GCC transport, it will be zero-rated as well. And that's going to be, and then basically you open the box of Pandora. How do you basically connect a service with such a main service? If, for example, and the same goes, by the way, for local transport that are connected with international. So you might indeed have a pickup somewhere in Bahrain, bring it to a warehouse, because then it will be packed into a container to be shipped abroad. So in that case, that local service can be an ancillary service and should not be taxed at 5%. And that's going to be basically where interpretation, where best practice will come in. We don't expect any clear guidelines, unfortunately, going forward. But what will be the determination? If basically the goods are only stored for 5 days in a warehouse before they go internationally, is that sufficient to connect the local transport for it? On the other hand, it makes sense that if you pick it up locally and then you leave it 1 year in a warehouse, then it's very difficult to immediately connect the initial local transport with international transport. The same for warehousing. If the warehousing service is just basically like a transit operation, then you connect it easily, then it's going to be zero-rated. On the other hand, if you've got goods there that are not immediately destined to go abroad, but then will be transported abroad, in that case, it's a warehousing service subject to local VAT where the warehouse is located. So that's going to be the matter of interpretation. Fortunately, we have probably every other country outside of GCC has a certain practice of rules and regulations that explain this one. Now, the UAE, the GCC and all the countries, they are following a more or less European-based VAT system. So we can indeed work on the basis that some of these rulings and best practices will and can be applied here. Bottom line is going to be us as business that will be shaping how the VAT will be looking like. So we can indeed take advantage of that. Don't get me wrong on the word advantage. It doesn't mean avoiding or evading the tax, but it's indeed to shape how the VAT will be applied. Because one thing is certain in the discussions I had with the ministry, they want to make sure that it has a minimal impact on the Bahrain economy, and the same goes for the other countries as well. The fact that I was a bit late, I had a very long session with the financial sector this morning with a lot of questions, I must say that one, but also there, specifically for that sector, the government wants to safeguard Bahrain as a financial center. It's not going to be different for your sector. There is very clear discussion that I remember that as a transport, as a logistics hub, now I'm talking about Bahrain, but probably the same goes for the other countries as well. They want to make sure indeed that as a hub it is not affected either through the implication and the implementation of VAT. Doesn't mean you can just do whatever. Of course, it needs to sit within the framework of the law. So you cannot just local transport when it's clear you cannot just go and not tax it, because it's fairly clearly going to say that it is taxable. At this point, are there any specific questions? I should be stopping now my contribution, but might actually be taking this one. VAT is not going to be only about your accounting systems. It's not going to be only about your invoicing. It's not going to be only about basically applying or not applying. VAT will have an impact across your whole organization. Your contracts and agreements, does it have a VAT clause? If you do a local transport, if you do local warehousing, if you do local cargo packing services, Does it say in your current contracts that you are allowed to apply VAT and to charge VAT? Maybe your customer might play it hard and say, I don't pay this, it's not in my contract. So have indeed a tax clause in it. Look, of course, the system is going to be very important. It's not just switching on an existing module. You're going to have to configure it, especially what you're looking at doing. So how are you bundling these elements? What is indeed your underlying services to your main service? We're still waiting for some confirmation about airport services. Some of you might indeed be supplying to Bahrain Airport Service Company. But I would expect that if there are any services supplied to international airliners, whether it's cargo or passenger traffic, in that case, the airliner will go abroad, so it's connected to an international transport. So these are the elements that we still need to clarify overall. The same question comes if we supply fuel to international airliners. In principle, it's a supply of goods locally, but the airline will take 99% of that fuel abroad as well. So these are some clarifications. So you need to have a specific configuration setup of your systems going forward. SAP, Oracle, other elements, other ERPs, they do have indeed a module, but just don't assume that because it's there, it's going to be ready to go for this environment. You might also have legacy systems and your logistics and follow-up systems. How do they connect into your accounting system? Because it's a very formal tax. So you'll have to be able to produce proof that you apply the correct VAT treatment. You're going to have to produce indeed proof that your local transport is connected to international transport. If the price of the local transport is included in the import value of the goods, because it's one supply of goods, you're going to have to prove indeed that it has been taxed via import VAT, so you don't have to tax it yourself anymore. So all your legacy systems and feeding systems need to be set up as well in that respect. Mentioned VAT compliance. Yes, it's a formal tax. You have to do it. The expectation, I probably can give that to you as 100% confirmation, will be that every quarter you need to file VAT returns. In a more simplified form, that means I owe that much VAT, this is my taxable basis, but of course it needs to be supported by your underlying systems. We talked about netting or refund of VAT. But overall, this is a bit the overview of your compliance documentation. So I'm always linking into a process. In 25 years of doing VAT, I've probably seen everything and the most impossible things. Having proper documentation, your invoices, your debit of credit notes, your import-export documentation that has been provided to you as a copy, your contracts, but also, of course, every data that sits in your ledgers, in your systems, do keep a good overview of it, because it can only help you. It's such an easy catch for a tax inspector who comes to see you in 5 years' time to realize, hey, he doesn't have invoices, so how many invoices doesn't he have? And apply 500% VAT penalty on top of it because you're not in accordance with the compliance element. So don't give them that pleasure going forward. You would have to look at your invoices. So your invoice, we call it tax invoice, but even if you don't charge tax because it's 0%, you still have to tell on your invoice, there is an example here, why you don't tax it. So it's basically based on article or section that much from the Bahraini VAT law, it's zero rated. Doesn't mean that you're safe, because a tax inspector can always challenge the application of the treatment, but at least you've got an invoice and you will not have to pay penalties. Plus your suppliers, your customers will need that. If you don't provide them with an invoice, VAT becomes a cost for them, because that's the basis that they can recover VAT. So if it's not yourselves, you can expect some phone calls from customers. In Malaysia, by the way, the first 3 months, about 60% of invoices were not correct, and that created quite a significant cost for the new VAT payers there. So what can you do now, basically, because that's the $1 million question. And I'm taking this from a perspective, don't do anything now. That's quite simple. We're going into the holy month of Ramadan. There's not going to be happening too much in that case, and it's summer. On the other hand, yes, don't wait until 3 months before. There's a couple of steps. And one of the elements I would suggest you to do is to look exactly at the what. What am I doing? What are my services? Where am I located? Where are my warehouses located? Am I working in the free zones? Because the free zones normally will escape VAT. How do I work with my clients? So what are my underlying services? If I'm charging one price, but what sits under it specifically? That's an element I would recommend you to do, let's say, in the next 2 to 3 months. Because that's going to give you then also the chance to reflect that against your systems. So I need to basically, that's going to be taxable, that's not going to be taxable. I know what I need as documentation, I know what I need as information. Is it already in my systems? Because then you can make a gap analysis according to your systems, not just your accounting system, but also the other one. And once you have that one and you have a blueprint of what needs to change or needs to be updated, then you can have your timeline. Not a timeline that any of your consultants, not a timeline that me as an advisor would impose on you. I'm never in that business, because this is your project. But you might be coming to the conclusion, hey, I'm actually quite good. I've got all of this one, and I can implement it. I can start, since I'm only working in Bahrain, I can start in February, and I'll be ready by April. You still got a business to run, so you don't want basically to interrupt your normal business flow. On the other hand, you might be in another position in September and saying, whoa, I've got a lot of things to look at. So I might indeed work out at a timeline that gets me ready. I need to buy a new module for my ERP system, my accounting system. That takes some time. Because one thing, never assume that on the first day of VAT, everything comes out properly. Do some testing, do some validation, do some case studies, so that you are there, because it's going to save you so much headaches after that. So look at it probably towards end of summer or before the end of summer. Look at exactly what you're doing, connect it with the exact VAT treatment, and then basically have a reflection on how ready am I on the accounting and the system side, because that's going to determine your further implementation timeline. But it's not going to be that bad, I can tell you that. I think it's more in your sector a compliance annoyance, and it's a formal tax, so it's you responsible for doing it. So the authorities, they can sit back, relax, and then they will come and audit you in a couple of years' time, but you need to be ready with your first VAT return, you need to be ready with your invoices. So that's the main point, but hopefully doing that, it will not be a cost to you. That I saw a lot of people taking pictures, which is absolutely fine. There is no trademark on it. The easier way is if you leave somewhere your contact details, I'll circulate this one so you can get it immediately, together with a copy, if you want, of the English and Arabic version of the framework agreement, which is also in the public domain. Are there any questions before I hand over to the next person? Are there any benefits of introducing VAT to the businesses? Well, the only benefit I see, you take me a bit indeed by surprise, but it's a good question. In principle, no. That would be the point. Okay, you basically become a tax collector for the government. That's it. Are there any benefits? I can think immediately of one. Is that if you, for whatever reason, you would incur VAT in another country, because the rule says they have to charge it to you, some of these countries, they only give it back to you if there is reciprocity. So they only give it back to you if you are a VAT payer in your own country as well. So that might be a benefit. Germany, on top of my head, is one of these countries. If you would get a charge on an invoice of German VAT, now you will be able to get it back, but before Germany would tell you, do you have a VAT in your own country? No, so I reject it in that case. But otherwise, no, I don't see any benefits as such. Probably the benefit, you can turn to a benefit, is that you're going to need to put different and maybe more sophisticated and accurate processes in place to do the follow-up on your own invoicing. The benefit would be that you need to keep an eye on your cash flow, because to make sure that if you pay VAT, that you maximize the VAT that you get, so you minimize the cash flow impact. that you're going to be chasing your billing collection a bit better because you want that VAT to be paid by your customers. So it might only make your organization more robust. But now I'm probably pushing it far ahead on benefits, I guess.
Well, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. My question is regarding different territories. UAE, specifically Dubai, is an exporting country. Right. Or exporting region. And a consuming country, one of the biggest is Saudi Arabia. How would the VAT be treated on a country level? Would the UAE collect the VAT and keep it to themselves? Because the end product will end up in Saudi Arabia.
That's correct. Well, I think so if the underlying example to what you're asking is in exporting country, are you talking about a transport service or are you talking about the supply of the goods?
The supply of the goods. Supply
of the goods, well, then we're coming indeed into supply of goods. The UAE will not retain the VAT because intra-GCC supplies of goods, so basically a good supplied from one country and delivered in another country, will not be taxed in the country where the goods is delivered from, in that case. So there will be no UAE VAT on that, but it needs to be taxed somewhere. So in that case, when it arrives in Saudi, in that case, the Saudi customer will have to do that reverse charge, and then basically it will become taxable in the country of arrival. There is technical concepts to it, but that's basically the treatment as it goes. The same goes for export. The same goes when a good is basically supplied from the UAE to a non-GCC country. The same treatment will apply. In that case, no UAE VAT, and then it depends on the rules of the other country of import if it will be taxed at import over there. One small difference is when you basically supply from the UAE, you supply goods to non-taxpayers, people like you and me, private individuals in another country. As soon as you exceed a certain threshold, which is again about $100,000 equivalent per year, so as soon as you make supplies to private individuals from one country to another country, and it's per country, then basically, as long as you're below that threshold, you apply UAE VAT. If you exceed your threshold in Saudi to private individuals, you need to go and take a number over there and then apply Saudi VAT. But that's for private individuals. But business to business, no UAE VAT, Saudi VAT. But not by yourselves, by the customer.
Thank you.
Was that clear? Because I appreciate. Okay. If not, please talk to me. I haven't forgotten you, so we're going.
I would like to know how it works in terms of transportation.
The VAT rate on transport?
Yeah, VAT.
5%.
5%.
That's unless it is zero rated.
Okay. In case, I'm from the airline industry, okay, in case we have a shipment coming in as a charges collect shipment, how do we deal with it? And in case we have an export shipment from here, how do we deal with the freight collected from the customer?
Okay. First of all, you've got a shipment coming in. You're talking about a shipment of goods coming in, an import.
Yes, as an import.
An import.
But freight payable here in Bahrain.
You're in Bahrain.
Yeah. So freight payable in Bahrain.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, the whole cost is coming in. So meaning that in your import value, transport as well as insurance is also included on that side. So I think that's your Incoterm that you apply in that case. Well, two elements. First of all, the import value of the goods will be taxed. That basically means that this is going to be your element. That also means that it includes transport, it includes insurance, it includes whatever handling costs as well. So that's going to be your basis. If you're basically supplying that to another company because you're a subcontractor, you need to be able to document clearly that your service was taxed at import. As the overall one. So that, and in that case, you don't have to charge VAT. That's your basic point. What is the import value? It's, of course, the value of the goods and the whole package, plus the customs duties. So VAT will apply on customs duties, on top of customs duties of 5%. Export, same. Export, basically, if you're a subcontractor and you're a supplier of goods, but the whole value includes the transport, includes whatever there is. Same there, you need to procure yourself the clear documentation that your service was part of that export, and in that case, you don't have to charge VAT. So that's how you document it.
I'm not talking into the complete value of the goods. I'm talking in terms of the freight portion, which the airline collects.
Yeah. But if it's separated out, it still is international transport, and it's zero rated, as we could see.
Okay, right. Thank you.
And I think that's a distortion, and that's going to give the rise to planning ideas by separating that one out, for example.
Yeah, thank you.
I think I didn't want to go into tax planning ideas, but we just got one. There was a question at table.
Very good presentation. I'm Ravi. You just compared some of the countries already implemented this. Has anyone set a queue on this, and what is the impact, real impact now?
I think I don't get the sense of your question.
You have already compared some of the countries implemented, and what is the real impact now?
Well, I think if some countries, put it like this, some countries go first, other countries don't go first. One thing to realize is that the GCC customs union stays in place. So I think from a customs perspective, that doesn't make a difference to it. So VAT is a different tax to it. If some countries go first, and they will go first, and other ones follow after that, it is perfectly workable. Europe has examples like that, where elements of countries or places in countries are not part of the VAT territory of the European Union. Same goes here. So in that case, Bahrain, if they come afterwards, from a VAT perspective, not from a customs, but from a VAT perspective, Bahrain will be considered to be a non-GCC country for VAT. So it basically means that transport becomes international transport. Whatever is services have the qualification of international, that will be applicable as it goes. But on the other hand, from a customs perspective, there will be no difference to it. It also means that if goods, in your example, go from the UAE having VAT to Bahrain having no VAT, from a VAT perspective, it will still be considered an import in Bahrain, and VAT will apply here, not on the customs value, because that's already paid, but on the VAT value. So it's, let's hope it's going to be a short period going forward, but it will be a workable period.
I have a question I'm importing items to my yard, working for Asri. How would this VAT will affect the bonded area, free zone area? If I import an item for my client for repair, I will bring it, for example, from Dubai.
Yes.
And when it comes to Bahrain, do I have to pay the VAT for the transportation by air or by road?
And it will go back to the bonded area afterwards?
It will go, my place is the bonded area, and it will be on the ship, and it will sail. Do I have to pay a VAT here?
In your example, I don't expect so. It's one of these points that is not clearly discussed.
I mean,
here.
Are we going to be exempted here?
Within the bonded area, yes, there will be no VAT applied. So whatever happens within the free zone, within the bonded area, it's not part of the territory. It's not in free circulation.
I mean, who will be implemented on us when it comes to custom point on the entry of sea or air or road in the causeway? Who will implement it also? They said, this is a matter subject, is a matter for a VAT. Yeah. Or they will tell us, no, you are exempted because you are in the...
I think no, it's not exempt, it's going to be zero rated. So you might indeed incur some VAT for other reasons, so you will be zero rated. So in other words, when you are operating in a bonded environment, when you're operating in a free zone, you are outside of the VAT territory of the country. So whatever you do, because you might indeed sell within the bonded warehouse, within the free zone, that will not be subject to any VAT.
Because for items for GCC, we have to pay a duty now. When it comes for a vessel or running in the GCC or carry the vessel flag of GCC country, I have to pay the tax for it, the 5%. But if it comes now for the VAT, if I will be exempted as well because I am outside the country territory?
Well, I think I've tried to explain it with 3 examples. So if somebody supplies to you in the bonded area, it will be an export and no VAT will be applicable, and then it's coming in the bonded area. If you sell from the bonded area to the country, in that case for you it becomes a supply, and then the person buying it has to pay the import VAT. If you, because you start with an example, if you have goods, material that you need to have repaired, in that case there will be a regime in place that it will be temporary suspension. So if you bring them out to be repaired and they go back in, then basically it is not subject to VAT. You don't have to pay any VAT here. And I would expect, but I might be wrong, I would expect that the repair service, since it's connected to an international relationship, will also not be subject to VAT. But that I cannot give you 100%.
Now, what I want to say, the more of the goods which comes to me, it comes to the owner, which is this vessel in my GT, and when it comes entering to my yard, which is the bonded area, so when it comes and I say this is in a transit, it will come to his ship.
If it stays in transit,
it will not come to my warehousing actually.
But if it's in transit, that means it has not entered the VAT territory of the country. So it basically will not be subject to any VAT.
Or
so if there is transit arrangement,
and if it's warehousing, if I will bring it, then
correct.
I will give it to certain vessels there.
Yeah,
what
correct.
I will do, it will be a subject to VAT
No,
or no?
will not be.
So thank you very much. Thank you.
There is a lady there who had a question, and she's been very patient.
Mr. Nasser covered most of my question. It was about transit shipments, and we have a facility in a bonded area, so I was wondering if there is a set period for it to be transited there.
Well, the set period that I would give you, but it's not yet certain, it's only 3 months. So that's basically common best practice around the world to have 3 months.
And if we move it from that storage area as an item for storage for an international rig, so say an offshore rig, will any tax be implemented there?
I think that basically if you move it for international transport, it will then escape VST. I think, honestly, I think I'm a bit lost at your example. So to basically keep it you basically bring it to a bonded warehouse, you keep it there in transit. The common practice is that 3 months is acceptable for
what
basic.
If it's more than 3 months?
If it's more than 3 months, then you have basically, again, that's not impossible. You have to document why it stays there. Are there any good commercial reasons why it stays in transit? And it's not just the fact that the point is it will escape VAT if the goods are ultimately and clearly destined for export. And then basically that means they are in transit to it. So if from the beginning it is very clear that they are destined for export and you have that documented, you might exceed the 3 months. But 3 months is normally a cut-off date where questions are being started to be asked, okay, why is it longer there? Very good. Well, I think to the extent, I think that's a very good clarification, and apologies for my ignorance of that rule. But in that case, if I then extrapolate it to the VAT, then it might well be that I have to basically change my answer from 3 months best practice, as I know it in the rest of the world, to the 1 year, because it's already laid down in other legislation as acceptable. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Felipe, for the good information you have given to us. And I have 2 questions.
I couldn't find you. There you are. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. I have 2 questions. One, you have mentioned in the screen that basic food supplies zero related VAT. What is basic food supplies you mean?
There is a list of 94 items.
Which is already published?
It is not in the framework agreement. I think I can find that for you. But basic food items is literally what you call basic food items. That means bread, rice, flour, meat even, and it goes on for that one. That will be what Bahrain will apply. UAE has announced now they would tax all of it. They don't care. But importantly, it's supply of basic food items. So take this, drinking water will be a basic food item. So if I sell this to you, it's zero rated. It doesn't direct VAT. Problem is, if I open it and I give it to you, I provide you a service. And then it's not zero rated anymore. So that's important. So that means also that restaurants, for example, that's a service they give in because they serve you the food, but they might also have a sale of bread next to it, so they're going to have to basically have two arrangements to it. And I think, I don't know, but in Belgium, my home country, it's common practice that you cut your bread at the bakery. But here, if you cut the bread and you present it like this, it might be a service and not a basic food item anymore. But the list does exist. I don't have it with me, unfortunately, here.
One more, please. The promotion, if I make 1 + 1, the VAT is for 1 or VAT is for 2?
It's on 1. It's basically what you get as you can sell with a loss. Otherwise, all the Ramadan sales and the Eid sales would be coming into trouble. So it's a consideration. So VAT doesn't look at profit, looks at revenue. So 1 + 1 in a promotion will be subject to what you ask as a price for it.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Philip. Thanks for your very informative presentation. It's me.
There you are. Okay.
Yeah, just two questions. One, I'm from Trafco Logistics. We have a third-party warehousing. And just people bring the goods, store it for a couple of weeks, and they take it back. Is it coming under chargeable VAT for the service?
So the warehousing as a service is indeed under chargeable VAT.
Thank you.
No, I'm not finished. Fortunately for you, I'm not finished. So that's your starting point. So in other words, if I live in Hamala, if you basically have a warehouse there and I put some goods because of my furniture comes and I put it with you, you have to charge me 5% VAT. On the other hand, if your warehousing service is going to be connected, I'm trying to at least look at you.
That's okay.
If your warehousing service is going to be directly connected with intra-GCC or international transport, then you don't charge VAT to whoever does that.
Yeah, my case is only locally.
In that case, it will be 5% VAT.
Just one more question.
Unless you have a bonded warehouse, in that case, it is not attracting VAT.
Just one more question. Is KPMG, are they started giving any training for this VAT or anybody else is giving training?
Yes, I will be giving indeed sector-specific training as well. Wanted to do that one basically after everybody is back from summer, because then we're going to also have more details around the VAT return, about the systems, but yes, we're going to do sector. And that's either we're doing it in connection with the ministry, because I hope I can continue working with the ministry, like the UAE did, or we're doing sector-specific ones, yes.
Thanks, I'm just marketing for KPMG. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just inquiring about how do you deal applying the VAT in cases of temporary import and temporary export. Like, for example, machinery is going out for export and return, and there will be some charges for the repairs, not for the machinery itself. And on the other hand, when shipments are coming in for temporary import, and then it will be re-exported after certain use. How do you apply the VAT here? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. We might cancel the next session if I go into detail on that one, but broadly and high level, temporary import will normally be subject to temporary suspension of both customs duties and VAT. So any type of work or any type of thing that has been done, same with work on goods that are coming temporarily in, so normally it will escape VAT because it will be following the temporary suspension of customs duties. That's the normal answer. But then there is compliance, there is documentation that needs to be looked at specifically. The repair charges normally are connected to the temporary suspension. So normally they would escape VAT. There will be zero rated on VAT for that.
Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. It was very informative and useful to all the delegates, and most of the questions, I believe it was answered and doubts were cleared. I would like to honor the presenter, so I would like to invite the event chair, Mr. Ravi, to give the memento. Round of applause, please. Indeed, it was the most awaited session. Everybody was eager to listen to this session. You made it really, really useful to us. Thank you very much once again. And, okay, we heard about the taxation's implications and the proposed VAT, Now, next thing is we want to expand our horizons, and we need to see the opportunity to develop our multimodal hub. To speak about it, we have a gentleman who is the director of Bahrain Logistics Zone. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Hamad Mohammad Fakhru to give the presentation.
Assalamu alaikum. In the beginning, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizer to bring us all together here to refresh our minds, as well as we all stakeholders here, either business providers or government agencies. And it's always good to touch bases again and see an update and get very informative information. My presentation will be somehow almost a summary of what we've seen earlier. We've seen a presentation about the port. We've seen a presentation about the Gulf Air. So I will try to put things together to see how we can make use out of this. First of all, let's look at the location of Bahrain. Bahrain is technically in the center of the Gulf, and it's very small. If we look at Bahrain, Bahrain is a very tiny economy, but it's very efficient. The word speed is very important for the logistics sector, and I will show you how there are potentials which many of you are aware of that can take this potential and actually use Bahrain as a destination to serve the bigger markets. We are surrounded, or actually I want to say, I want you to imagine that the Gulf is divided in two halves, the lower half and the upper Gulf, which is the northern Gulf. Bahrain can complement, let's say UAE, to serve the upper Gulf. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, including the eastern province up to Riyadh, as well as Kuwait, potential Iraq. All these markets, in fact, Bahrain has a lead in bringing the goods into the end consumer, which I will show you how these economies are quite big within the region. This slide, just to demonstrate that you can see the population, and the purchasing power is quite huge when you look at the GDPs. For instance, a population in Qatar for 2.2, and the GDP of 166 billion. Of course, these figures are a bit old, from 2015. We got them from the World Bank. The Saudi economy is $646 billion, and I want to reiterate that the majority of the population is basically within reach, basically 7-8 hours, and that's a normal destination, especially for the land transport. And the majority of the projects, in fact, they lays within that area. The summary I was speaking about, I don't want to bore you with details about APM, because we have seen the presentation earlier this morning. But the message here, we have a relatively new port, was inaugurated in 2009, and has all the best facilities. But most importantly, which I think the guy from APM terminal was shy to say, that this port is one of the most efficient port in the GCC. And in fact, it has very high standard. Those figures as statistics, they are comparable to Hong Kong and Singapore and all these exporting major hubs. So the message here, not only that it is it has all the right equipment, but also professionally managed and operated by the operator APM terminal. So my point is, the sea transport is quite efficient and fast. This slide just to illustrate. I will not talk about Gulf Air. Gulf Air is one of the most regionally connected. We have seen that 10 destinations per day. There are certain flights, for example, to UAE, 7-8 flights per day. To Qatar, maybe 7-8 flights per day. And they did mention that there is capacity. So Gulf Air is contributing to the cargo, which we all here for. And we also have DHL. And there are others. For instance, we have Aramix. They have 3 to 4 charter airplanes per week, bringing all kinds of goods, including the shop and ship. Those of you order over the internet, all the goods come to Bahrain and then gets distributed to the rest of the region. And there are other companies, for instance, companies in the fashion business. The items are quite time sensitive. Companies like Zara, Missumi Duty, and many others, Armada, for instance, they bring all the goods into Bahrain and distribute it throughout the GCC and up to Northern Africa like Egypt and so on. So the bottom line, there are certain companies have realized that air, land is quite effective, or sea, land, mode of transport is quite effective. We, Bahrain, already have this, and we are building on it. We have to be on our toes because the competition is quite fierce, and all countries are, in fact, working very hard in being having the best numbers in terms of speed. When we compare ourselves, I'm not here to compare and to compete with Dubai. We complement Dubai. Dubai, they take all the credit for putting not only Bahrain, the entire GCC on the world map. They have started, they are quite efficient. Many mother vessels come to Dubai and things get distributed. But those companies that actually do their due diligence and investigate for cost effectiveness, Bahrain is cheaper and it's closer to these markets, which are the consuming markets. One of the most important things that actually Bahrain has is the connectivity through land. Without this bridge, without the causeway, forgive me to say that Bahrain will be an isolated island. Many of the things that we have today, we will not have. Today, about 1,000 containers cross the causeway on a daily basis. And in fact, the numbers for passengers, visitors coming to Bahrain on special holidays or certain timing, it reaches about 100,000 cars over a couple of days. So we have those, the logistics, basically, people coming, cargo going and coming, and we are lucky by I think by pure luck that the causeway is the most efficient way into Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has about 37 entry points between airports, ports, you name it, land borders. But the causeway is the most effective way in reaching those markets. So simply, I want to summarize what I have said before. Airport is quite good. The port is actually excellent. And we spoke about the causeway. In addition to this, we have Bahrain Logistics Zone. It's the bonded area. The previous presentation was about VAT. The message is no one will escape the VAT. But in a bonded area, you can delay the VAT. So you can bring your goods. In case your goods is not going to go to the GCC, it might go to Turkey, it might go to Egypt. It can increase or it can enhance your cash flow. You can put it, the VAT and the customs together, it's about now 10%. It will become more of an important to use such facility. And if I elaborate about the Bahrain Logistics Zone, it is 1 square kilometer, it is fenced, it has security, and the most important element, they have customs personnel, dedicated custom personnel, available 24/7. That type of service, in fact, is not available anywhere in the GCC. And we are proud for having it, and we appreciate, in fact, all the stakeholders working very hard. Let me convey a very small, but I'm proud of it actually, a small event. Today, the minister did not show up, as well as the undersecretary from Ministry of Transportation, because there is a logistic committee. It's headed by His Highness the Crown Prince. They meet about on a monthly basis. This is how serious it is. It has been going on for over a year and a half, and such a simple act, like when people sit together on one table and just to put issues and trying to come up with solution, and they have very clear objective. This is what actually makes us excited. Things have, in fact, I can see that we are moving forward, because if we look at the last 2 years, now there are congestions, but it used to be 10 days, 1 week of tracking and queuing. Now we are talking about 1.5 days, and that's because it's a seasonal thing. Saudi Arabia is a consuming market, and Ramadan is just around the corner, so this is the peak, and we're talking about 1.5 days. In fact, prior to, let's say, about a month and a half ago and 2 months ago, the average time was 13 hours for a truck to take the goods from the port. Once their documentation is ready, they can be inside Saudi Arabia in half a day. This is a fantastic proposition for any company to tap in the markets that I shared with you on the first slide, which is Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. This is an opportunity for the companies. Now, the logistic park, I will just tell you briefly, it's simply for logistic companies. We lease land, and we encourage companies to bring the goods and add value to it. For instance, an IT or IT providing company, let's say Dell, can bring the laptop and change the keyboard by Arabizing the keyboard, putting the Arabic letters in it as well as the manual, packaging it again, and sending it. This is where the actual logistics, I'm sure most of you know about this small details. There is a thin line between light industry and logistics. So we encourage at the zone companies to add value because it will provide employment and so on. Just briefly, just to avoid certain questions, some of you will ask, what is the duration of the leasing? It's 20 years. The price is 4 dinars. It's technically 3.5 plus 15. And yes, we have 2 types of tenants. A developer that will build a pre-built facility and then lease it to third party, or a company that would come and lease from the government and for their own distribution. Last week, in fact, we signed a very good deal with a leading company in Kuwait. They are in the fashion business. One of their brands is Riva and Choice and so on. They have about 15 brands. They moved their operation out from Kuwait to Bahrain because I remember them coming to my office about 8 months ago, and I had very, very simple message to them. I said, why don't you try it? I mean, don't take my word. You can try Abu Dhabi, you can try Sharjah, you can try Qatar, you can try Bahrain, and see which one is the most consistent, which is the most important message to any logistic country, a logistic company. Speed and consistency, and it has to be cost effective. In fact, they tried it out. They disappeared from my office, and they tried Qatar, and they tried their usual business out of Kuwait. They came back, and they said, you know what, we actually did what you advised us, and we are here very serious, and we want to sign. In fact, they are very active right now. They ship about 4 containers per day, putting the consignments on the shelf And that's very important element for fashion company, because it's a game about who beats whom in terms of trends and so on. I thank you. This is my presentation. If you have any question, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Any special facility you are providing for warehousing, cold storage?
Any special what?
For cold storage warehousing.
For Causeway?
Yeah, any special facility you are giving?
And
cold storage.
Cold storage, okay. We have developers that actually have built facilities like temperature controlled, and they would be leasing it to a third party. The good news is the logistic zone, it has all the infrastructure, from wide roads that was designed specifically for the sector, you name it, power. To answer your question, we have ample power that you can come. For instance, one of the companies that is under construction now is B&B, which is Bonds. The entire facility is temperature control and sub-zero also. So it requires a lot of power. There are 3PLs providing such services. And in fact, we have a couple of more companies also looking into this specialized warehouses. If they need it, they can have it without any issues.
What is the minimum space that's available for lease for built warehouses, not temperature controlled, ventilated?
Okay, I will answer your question in two parts. We as government, we lease lands, plots, so the minimum size is about 4,000 square meter. And for pre-built facilities, the developers, investors, have built warehouses. They're starting from 500 square meter up to a couple thousand square meter.
So the minimum is 500, thank you.
5,000 for land?
No, I mean the minimum for the warehouse is 500 for the built house.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Hello. You were saying the pre-built warehouse, 3.6 dinars per square meter per month.
No.
That's what? 3.
3 dinars.
Okay. Is
Yes.
it inclusive utility, power?
No.
That's
and this is only indicative number, because, for instance, your company might want to lease 4,000 square meter.
Yeah.
And they are ready to sign 3-year lease or 5-year lease. You can negotiate your rate. You can bring it down rather significantly.
So you are talking about ambient temperature. It's not
Yes.
temperature.
No, this is ambient.
And is there any minimum requirement of period, lease period, 1 year or?
Depending on your requirement. I mean, the developers are
Yeah.
ready to lease you on a monthly basis or yearly basis. This is, you take it directly with them. We as government, we don't lease it. We only.
One last question. What about the goods free movements, or it is you can easily bring the goods 24/7? Basically, we want to lease from you, and
Yeah.
we want to run as a 3PL, third-party logistics.
Okay.
But the main problem people are saying in the Bahrain logistics zone, they cannot move the goods. There are custom checking or duty paid because
It's your call. And inside the logistic zone, you have two options. Either you clear it at the port
Yeah.
and you pay the customs duty, or in fact you ask for the goods to be imported into a bonded area, and then you bring it into your warehouse. Moreover, your warehouse is divided into halves. Some of it is bonded, some of it non-bonded.
Yeah, okay.
If the duty, customs duty, and now VAT also paid, you are free to take it out any minute, any time of the day.
Okay.
However, if it's bonded, you also have that facility, but you have to do some customs declaration, and you do the customs duty, and then you can export it. So, but the good news, as I said, only recently, about 6 months ago, the customs officials are providing this facility, which is 24/7. That type of service actually is unheard of anywhere.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation and information. I was just wondering about our development on the customs clearance side, and are we going paper-free clearance in the future?
Sure. As I told you, we as stakeholders, we have relatively good information, and we do meet a lot with customs and also other, not only customs, but also the environment sometimes, or health, or what have you. All those stakeholders, in fact, are going electronically, and they have started. Bahrain is lacking behind. In my presentation, I said we have to be on our toes, in fact, to be advancing and to have the top figures. To answer your question in short, yes, we will eventually go paperless. Now, halfway we are through, because I think you're in the industry and you know that you can process your documentation through their system.
Thank you very much, Hamad. It was very informative presentation. Personally, it gave me a clear picture of the current logistics situation in Bahrain, as well as the potential is there. Recently, that we know most of the GCC countries, they are working hard in order to be the regional logistics hub. So how would you see that competition, and how you prepare for it in Bahrain?
As I said, we have to be on top of the game and ahead of the game. It's only a matter of being more efficient. Speed, that's the word. Cost is the second word. And the third most important element, consistency. For logistic companies, they need to plan. You cannot surprise them. Today you want this documentation. Tomorrow you want the other documentation when it comes to export. It shouldn't be that way. Today it takes 1 day, and tomorrow it takes 1 week. They need to plan. If you are consistent, and Bahrain, in fact, is considered one of the cheapest for doing business, if you look at all numbers altogether, this is what we have to check, basically. In fact, I look at it, it's a compliment as well. For instance, any product that is leaving Bahrain is going to the other country. You all know that when you enter a country, the first thing you get greeted with is immigration, second, customs. It's the customs of the other country, wherever you go. You go UK, you go US, you go anywhere, you go Saudi Arabia. Then if, for instance, Saudi becomes more efficient, that's good for Bahrain. Because, for instance, all the congestion and the queuing at the causeway is not caused by the local government. It's what's happening on the other side. But in fact, the two countries are putting their hands together, collaborating more than ever. This has been going on for over a year, and putting solutions. I was very, very pleasantly surprised. In fact, about 3 weeks ago, there was another event in logistics, and from the top management, the Saudi customs officers was there, and he said they are thinking of 24 hours or more than one shift. That's fantastic. It means the causeway will operate much longer, not only the causeway, also the other borders. For the GCC and for consumer, there will be beneficial. To answer your question, we just have to be slightly ahead of the game in terms of technology, training the employees, and in fact, facilitating and legislation for the transport and logistics sector.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hamad Fakhru. It was a wonderful presentation, and you tell us what is the advantage of doing a business in Bahrain by geographically, as well as you give us more info about the facilities offered by the Bahrain government. Thank you once again. To honor him, I would like to request Ms. Anita to give away the memento. I would like to apologize for extending the time. I think we may take another 20-30 minutes more because this is what we wanted to listen from the people, from the presenters, and it is very interesting and everyone is keen about it. I don't think anyone will object it. And to give more insight about the opportunity and development, we have a person who traveled all along from Saudi Arabia, who is compassionate, are passionate about building and developing robust and sustained economy and creating jobs and mentoring young pioneers and innovators and promoting manufacturing and supply chain and knowledge-based economy. He is also a member of Arabian Union of Land Transportation, Vice President of Council of Saudi Chambers National Transportation Committee, Vice President of Saudi Chamber of Commerce Shipping Committee, Committee member of Saudi Chamber of Commerce Transportation Committee. Also, he holds an MBA and bachelor degree in agriculture engineering, CISCP, CISCM, and he has other certified degrees. He is a people engagement specialist utilizing logical and creative approaches to work while presenting specialist information. Today, he's going to give more insight about the opportunities to develop the multimodal hub. Please put your hands to welcome Mr. Khalid Al-Bakri.
Assalamu alaikum. Massakum Allah bil khair jami'an. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be on the stage again to share with you my paper today. My colleague Hamad talked about the potential and the opportunities in Bahrain. And in reality, I'm going just to give the picture from Saudi Arabia. And also, I will give idea about the intermodal transportation and the company that I'm working for, which is Arasco Logistics, how we implement that and how we possibly, I think we were ahead of the game. So again, my paper, and before I forget, thank you for the very long introduction. It was really good. So here I'm talking about the logistics sector and the role in supporting the national economy. I will have 4 points to share with you today. The importance of logistics sector and its role in supporting and delivering or developing the economy. And then I will talk about the challenges that we have in Saudi Arabia in logistics sector. And then I will put the way forward to develop this sector and upgrade it in order to improve the efficiency and support the national economy and to keep pace with the 2030 vision of Saudi Arabia. Last point, I will give you a quick brief on Arasco, and I will zoom in Arasco Logistics. As all of us know that the logistics sector is one of the main sectors supporting the economic structure, as it contributes effectively to progress, the sustainable development in accordance to the relationship between the sector and other developed sectors. On the other hand, the low level of efficiency in logistics performance, it's one of the main obstacles in achieving economic growth and trade integration in the modern world. Here, maybe most of you heard back in 2016 in April, Saudi Arabia announced their Vision 2030, and I was honored to be part of that. We had a lot of workshops and a lot of preparation for that. And I remember I presented long presentation, and it was very transparency, and I was scared actually to say some words. I asked the government authority, is it okay to be very transparent? They said, no problem. So it was kind of rough information and reality, but they took it very positively, and they consider each point that we had in our workshops and meetings. So when I look personally at it, I found that out of the 22 main objectives on the Vision 2030 and Economic Transformation 2020, I found that 18 out of 22 is related either direct or indirect to the logistics sector, where we have specifically one of the main objectives is about the ranking of Saudi Arabia in Logistics Performance Index, the LPI, as you can see from the 52 to be in the 25th globally and the first regionally. And if we look at the LBI, I believe, again, most of you know what the LBI, but just I will share it in very quick. That is in an interactive benchmark tool created to help countries to identify their challenges as well as opportunities, and to help in improve their performance in the logistics services. And it's mainly taken into consideration 6 factors: the customs clearance, and the quality of the infrastructure, the ease arranging and price the shipments, the competency and quality of logistics services, and tracking the consignments, and on-time delivery. Mainly, they look at the 6 factors, and taken into this index is around 155 countries. If we look at the latest report, which was done by the World Bank in 2016, because it's mainly started in 2007 and it's done every 2 years. We'll see Germany in the first place with a score of 4.23, Luxembourg in the second place, Sweden, Netherlands, and Singapore. And when we look at the contribution of the logistics sector to the GDP, in Germany it's 10%, which is relatively high. Then we look at regionally, Emirates took the 13th place, and then and the first regionally, and then Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. And confirming what Mr. Hamad said, actually Bahrain is moved ahead of Saudi Arabia comparing to the last year. We'll see the contribution of the GDP for the logistics sector. It's only in Saudi Arabia 3%. Knowing that, even the telecommunication, it's combined with the logistics, or what we call it in Saudi Arabia, the transportation, because we don't have the terminology of logistics till last year. So combining the telecommunication and transportation, it's contributing only 3%, which is very low. If we look at the trend for Saudi Arabia, from 2007 till last year, 2016, it's declining, even though the score improved between, if we compare 2014 and 2016, it's improved, but the ranking is declined which means mainly there is an improvement in Saudi Arabia, but we really moving slow. And others, they moving fast, so you can imagine the gap is getting bigger. Here I will just give some quick figures. I will keep it all in front of you. That the KSA area is 2,150,000 square meters. The length of road is 60,000 kilometers. Number of heavy vehicles is 720,000. With the investments only in road trucks is 120 billion Saudi riyals. The volume is 9, and port capacity is 540 metric ton per year, where the actual tonnage handled in 2016 was only 230, which is below 50% of the port capacity. Here I just list some, not all, just some main internal challenges that we have related to the logistics sector in Saudi Arabia. The role of Ministry of Transportation to organize and supervise the sector, knowing that the policies and regulation in Saudi Arabia related to transportation, I was shocked, I just knew that 2 years ago, did not update it since 1970s. That's mean before most of us even born. That's a long time ago, it's out of dated, and it's not helping for growth and sustainable economy. The second factors is the mechanization, technology, and governance. We way behind, not globally, even regionally we are behind. And I would say I had a very good discussion when I visited the first time Jebel Ali port, and one of the people there, he told me, he's a friend of mine, he told me in reality that we are taking advantage of your inefficiency, which is absolutely right, because in terms of location, in terms of consumption, we have a lot of opportunities, but unfortunately we are way behind, even regionally, and the LPI index, I think, give a clear picture about our performance. The third one is the port and customs regulations and procedures again. That's one of the main challenges that where we have. During the break, I had a discussion with our colleague, Ruqayya, about what she faced when she was getting some consignment through Saudi Arabia, and she did not know what to do, no any standardization and the policies, so she had personally to go herself to the port and try to clear it, and that was struggling. Many people and many companies, they're facing the same problems where, for example, even for the delay of the consignments. Now, globally, it's an average of maybe 5% for the physical check of the consignment. In Saudi Arabia, it's around 40% of the total shipments is physical check, which is definitely delaying the releasing of the containers, and that's effect on the consignee, on the cost, and many other things of the delay. The fourth point is the information accuracy. When I was making a research, because I was invited to meet with the leaders in the governments and private sectors to present some information, just some of the information that I sent today. I had really hard time in getting the information. We don't have this information bank where you can go and get accurate information, and that was also one of the difficulties. Then the road and railway networks, Actually, the railway network started in Saudi Arabia since King Abdulaziz's time. This is very long time ago, but after that, it was not developed during the last decades, and we have only the line connecting the eastern province with Riyadh. We call it the orphan line because it's the only one, and for many years. Sure, later on, SAR came, the northern line. We're connecting the port of Ras Al Khair to Hizm Al Jalamid, and all the works now happening in Jeddah and Mecca, Haramain, if you have, I believe most of you heard of it. Also, there is a plan in the master plan. I got all the details because we are having very good connection with the railway, as we are in Arasco, one of the only 3 companies having access with the railway since 30 years ago. So there will be connection with the railway between SRO, which is Saudi Railway Organization, and the new SAR company. They will be connected from the eastern, and it will go all the way to the north. And there will be also restructuring on the railway in Saudi Arabia, where all the infrastructure will be owned by SAR company, and we'll have the first operator will be SAR and other operators. SRO, it will be disappear, it will be merged with the public transportation authority. Free zones, dry ports. We have, as far as I know, only 1 dry port in Saudi Arabia, and we have 0 free zones in the meaning of the free zones, which mentioned by some of the speakers in earlier presentations. And then the integrated logistics city, where I'm going to elaborate on this in later slides. And I will list also some of the challenges related to the field between Gulf and Arab cooperation and global trade, where the procedures and sea and land ports between the GCC, custom procedures and regulation between the GCC and Arab countries, and to be in line with the regulation and legislation internationally. The Gulf and Arab agreements in the field of land transport and its compatibility with the protocols applied internationally. There is many actually agreements signed long time ago, also since the 1970 and 80 and 90. Some of them not applied on the right way it's supposed to be. And there is many on hold, like the transit related to the insurance, related to the cold temperature control goods, and many other agreements on hold not signed yet. But recently, since the last quarter of last year, things start to get more dynamic and things will get better. And we will have, I just had a meeting 3 weeks ago with the head of the customs clearance in Saudi Arabia, and he mentioned we'll start that agreement. I forgot what it's called, but it's agreement about fast track between the 2 countries. Will start as a pilot with the UAE, and then it will be across the whole GCC. The last thing is, again, the road and rail networks between the GCC and Arab countries, which is the connectivity between the GCC and Arab countries. It was very active 2 years ago, but then it started to get slowed down. due to the economic situation and the oil prices. But internally, I believe in Oman and Saudi Arabia, they're continuing to connect the projects, nothing, as far as I know, putting on hold. Even the land bridge, which will connect the east with the west in Saudi Arabia, it's already done, clear, and it will be, when the implementation, I have no idea, but as far as I know, it will be a PPP project. Here again, what I have